we joined in Australia in 1970, and we used to be on the opposite side of the sidewalk from the Mormon missionaries. And so literally, I would spend hours looking at the Mormon missionaries on the other side of the sidewalk. And in those days, they had little tripods and pictures of the golden tablets appearing on the ground in Palmyra, and Joseph Smith, and kneeling down, and then Jesus and the Father. And so it's very clear that Jesus and the Father were two different people. And that alone makes the LDS community a relatively open, an open, inquisitive community, plus the idea of ongoing revelation, that you don't know it all, you don't have a franchise, but there's always newer things that God's revealing to you. So that made us very compatible, in fact.
Welcome to That's Church. My sister Emmy and I are on a mission to open our hearts and minds by attending different churches here in Utah. We're talking to the beautiful people that make their church a community. Have you ever seen the beautiful palace-like temple in Spanish Fork, Utah? Have you, or maybe someone you know, attended the Festival of Colors? Both of these wonderful things are connected to Krishna. We are here with Vi and Caru, the founders of the Krishna Temples in Holiday and Spanish Fork.
We noticed that when we come to your service, some of the people there, including yourselves, have a name they were born with, and then like a spiritual name. Is that what you would call it? Can you tell us a little bit about that and the significance and meanings behind those names?
Yeah, those would have a spiritual name. It means that they've taken vows and become what we call initiated, that they take a guru. That means someone to guide and instruct you and help you spiritually. And then he gives you a name which is spiritual. It reminds you of God in some way or another instead of just a mundane name. And often it reflects your nature, your character, or something like that, which is very interesting. So that's what you identify more with. Just like in Christianity, there are Christian names.
Right.
For instance, our names originally were Chris and Christine after Christ.
Oh, wow.
But now Caru means that Krishna is very beautiful, and Vaibhavi means that Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, which is Krishna's female aspect, is very influential, rich, and powerful. So names which do relate to a little bit to our characters. I'm very materialistic, love wealth.
She's very powerful.
She has that presence.
The female is Devi, followed by Devi, and the male is followed by Das. So Das means servant. So Charu Das means servant of the most beautiful. And Devi means goddess. So all the men are servant and the women are goddesses, which she'll agree with.
Very appropriate.
Yeah, very appropriate.
Oh, I love
also,
that. And
while we're on the subject, the term better half is traced back over 5,000 years to the Sanskrit. The woman, the wife, was known as the better half of the husband.
Oh,
I like that.
I'm so glad you explained.
She loved it.
Oh.
Now, two temples, multi-million-dollar temples built from the ground up, radio station, largest color festival. And it's just because of the way we work together, the chemistry. And the fact that we serve side by side. You know, we live in an I society, iPhone, iPads, marriage. You know, I'll stay in the marriage as long as you satisfy my senses. And if you stop satisfying my senses, then I'll find some other partner. But the I-centered projects, marriages, institutions, relationships are doomed, because it's not about me, it's about God. And so the most fruitful, productive, long-lasting marriages are going to be those of a threesome, the husband, the wife, and God. And when you serve shoulder to shoulder, side by side, with God in the center, it's going to last a long time. It's a formula for endurance. just like servicemen, men and women that even 20, 30, 40 years ago served in Vietnam or served in Korea or served in Iraq and served in Iran. They might have not have seen each other for a long time, but as soon as they get together, it's like they were never apart. That bond, which is created by service, is unlike any other.
I agree completely.
Wow.
Service bonds people together like nothing else can.
Exactly.
I agree.
You mentioned
the woman influences a man to expand. So if it's a materialistic relationship, she'll always want more and more, a bigger house, more furniture, more children, whatever. But if it's a spiritual relationship, she'll want to help him get more spiritual advancement, learn more about God. Instead of building a big house for himself, build a beautiful temple for God. So it's the nature of the woman is to help the man expand, but expand spiritually is better than to expand materially.
And it was so apparent in watching the way that you two work in the Krishna Temple together that you guys both lift each other up in different ways and complement each other so well. You mentioned the Festival of Colors, and like many Utahns, I have attended the Festival of Colors, which was so much fun. It was such a messy, entertaining, and kind of wild form of worship that I never experienced before. And so it was a very freeing experience for me. I would love to learn more about the significance behind the festival itself. And then we'd also love to hear a little bit about how you together established the temples in Spanish Fork and Holiday, Utah.
We didn't come here to build a temple. We came here to man a radio station. We never dreamed that we'd be able to build one, what to speak of two temples.
What started as a simple drawing later turned into a beautiful temple. Let's listen in.
I am an artist, and my tendency is to create beautiful things. I can't stop myself from doing that. We built a log house on the property, and then people started visiting and coming, and we started having programs here. The 5 acres the station was on, the radio station, there was an adjacent 10 acres, and it was left unpurchased. It was owned by the Catholic Church. And nobody could really afford it. The price was high, they wouldn't finance it. So we thought, well, when we got a little funds, we thought, let's get an extra couple of acres and add it to the 5 that we had. So Caru went in to the office, and the man, at that very time, the lady who was managing the properties had retired suddenly, and a new young man was there, and he said, just make me an offer and I'll finance it. And so from a very high price, it became a very reasonable price, and he was helping us finance it. So we brought the whole 10 acres. And at that moment, Caru said it cannot be used for anything except spiritual activities, festivals, temples. And all the neighbors came and wanted to buy some of it, but we said no. In the future, we'll build a temple here. And so they asked me to do a drawing. I thought, well, let me draw something outrageous, and it'll never get built, but I'll do a nice picture anyway, and it'll help fundraise. And I showed the picture one time at a Sunday feast program, and there were some BYU students who were on the newspaper there at BYU. And so the following week in the newspaper, Krishna's going to build a temple in Utah County. And then all the newspapers and TVs were down here, and you could see that they wanted us to build a temple. And so that's how that developed. And then it became very popular, and the festival developed, and that became very popular.
The festival's popularity, coupled with the increasing Indian community in Salt Lake City, led to the need for another temple. With raised funds and contributions like the $25,000 contribution from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on the Spanish Fork Temple, Caru located and purchased an amazing 4-acre property right in the Mill Creek area, and construction began on a beautiful new temple.
So that grew not by our determination, but by Krishna's grace.
Amazing. I love
Now,
how
about the
selfless.
festivals.
Yeah, I love how selfless it all is. It's all for the greater good and for spirituality and for others. I don't hear anything about yourselves in any of this, and it's
Yeah,
just
we just love to
really
serve. It's great fun.
Well, I can destroy.
so inspiring.
I can bring you down to earth on that one. You know, sometimes I wonder, because I love to communicate. I love public speaking. And so when you think about it, it's all driven by that desire. She loves art, and I love interacting with the public and creating very positive first impressions. And so in Los Angeles, that's the reason why I was doing radio in Los Angeles. I was in charge of the membership program, and in order to kind of coalesce all the Indians, the 10,000 families that lived in Southern California, I would go on the radio every Saturday morning. The Indian community would rent all the time on this one station from 8 in the morning till 2 o'clock. Travel agencies, Indian grocery stores, and we were right in the middle there. So I enjoy sharing the culture, and I enjoy articulating spirituality. And so, you know, that's why we came here, because we thought that it would be nice to have for that same $1,000 a month we were paying just to rent time in Los Angeles, we could cover the mortgage of a small radio station in a more rural area.
Right.
I didn't connect the dots on that radio connected to your public speaking, because you are a great public speaker. We've really enjoyed our visits and watching you teach.
Yeah, and then the number one fear that people have is public speaking. And the number two fear they have is death. I don't have any fear of public speaking. The bigger the audience, the slower my pulse rate is, the clearer my thinking is. So I told my friend, I said, I don't think I'll have much trouble dying, because I've already mastered what is a greater fear. You know?
So true.
That's amazing.
But the secret here, what he's saying here, you have to understand, is whatever skills you have, whatever talents you have, use them for God.
Yes.
I could become a famous artist. He could be a famous, TV or radio personality, for money, for influence, for power, prestige. But when you do it in relationship with God, it's a different kind of experience. It's a very deep pleasure. And still you're satisfying the needs to use the skills or the gifts given you by Krishna. So he gives us these talents, and if we use them for him, then they become glorious and enormously glorified, bigger than normally they would be.
Gordon Hinckley said in one of his books, I quoted it, I think it might have been, you might have been there, it was 3 or 4 Sundays ago. Gordon Hinckley said something to the effect that, the greatest pleasure in life is to help other people out. And then he went on to say that it probably does more good for the person who lends the helping hand than the recipient. And so, sure, I love to communicate, but the pleasure I get from it is not derived from some sense of ego or how great I am, but the pleasure I get from it is that, say, within a few hours at a Festival of Colors, I can make, to some degree or to some small or greater degree, the lives of 5,000 people better. And naturally that lights me up like a firecracker.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And you just want to do more and more and more, and you bigger programs, more radio stations, more festivals, more tours.
I'm already thinking, okay, what are my talents and how can I use them for something good? You're just very motivating and inspiring. And I think a lot of people will relate to your story so much. And
festival.
Essentially, it's getting as many people together as possible to share, the values and the practices of Krishna consciousness. It was originally celebrated by Krishna, whom we regard as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when he appeared on the planet 5,000 years ago. It was a way of enriching his loving reciprocal relationships with his devotees. And it does that. It brings people together.
Mm-hmm.
It helps them celebrate community. And Krishna, or God, is all about the community of everybody living together harmoniously and happily as brothers and sisters, recognizing the common Father. So Krishna observed it, and it has a religious origin. In 1995, we had our first holy festival, and I took what was basically an ethnic seasonal festival, and I tweaked it in three ways. One is, instead of being diffused all over in the highways and byways, people doing color every place, we gathered people together like you would for a concert, a mass gathering. The second thing we did was we introduced, there's Indian music, there's Bollywood, because everybody loves that. But there's also ska, there's reggae, there's hip hop, there's dub, the kind of music that a Western audience would enjoy, and the younger generation of Indians enjoy also. So that was the second innovation. And then the third was the throw. As far as I know, no one had ever done a throw in India, which is at the top of the hour, you get everybody counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then throwing the colors up as high and as far away from them as they can. So those are the three tweaks that we made, and they struck. They took, became viral. In fact, holy festivals, color runs, exploded all over the world, and even India took those three innovations I made and adopted them as their own. So if you look at the celebrations that go on in India today, you'll recognize the color throw. You'll recognize a mass gathering, and you'll recognize contemporary music.
Amazing.
That is really
and behind it all, of course, is the missionary motive. We want people to come, and although the music differs, the lyrics are all basic Sanskrit names of God. Krishna, Govinda, Ram, Madhusudan. It's interesting because for 2 years, we had we had invited an artist named Mickey Pauker, and he's very Jewish. He's a New Age Jewish singer, and he chants the names of God from the Old Testament, the Jewish names of God. And so when I would announce him on stage, I would say to the crowd, tongue in cheek, that if you have it on your bucket list to go to the Hare Krishna temple and chant Jewish names of God, you can now cross that off.
That's another thing I was going to mention before you even mentioned the Jewish community. I love, part of our goal here is to help unite different religions and to kind of find common ground. And you both do that so well. I noticed you mentioned Gordon B. Hinckley, you mentioned Joseph Smith in your talks. You've mentioned the Jewish community. I think you're very aware of where you live here in Utah, and that that's a big part of the culture here. And I think you're so respectful to that, and it says a lot that you take the time to get knowledge of the culture that surrounds you, and to kind of appease or connect with the people that are coming to your services. I think that's very, very commendable.
It's a real symbiotic relationship, because the LDS community, the LDS theology, has a very clear and unambiguous distinction between God the Father and God the Son. In fact, we joined in Australia in 1970, and we used to be on the opposite side of the sidewalk from the Mormon missionaries. And so literally, I would spend hours looking at the Mormon missionaries on the other side of the sidewalk. And in those days, they had little tripods and pictures of the golden tablets appearing on the ground in Palmyra, and Joseph Smith, and kneeling down, and then Jesus and the Father. And so it was very clear that Jesus and the Father were two different people. And that alone makes the LDS community a relatively open, an open, inquisitive community, plus the idea of ongoing revelation, that you don't know it all, you don't have a franchise, but there's always newer things that God's revealing to you. So that made us very compatible, in fact. We don't have that problem with the LDS community, nor do we have that problem with the more open-minded members of the Christian community.
Yeah. Interesting.
So interesting.
So
I think
interesting.
something that's helped me on my own spiritual journey is just opening my mind up to possibilities. And I've come to realize that in stepping out of the black and white kind of realm of spirituality, I actually feel more secure in the mystery of it all. And that's an interesting, like, I know it's hard for some people to be in that place with, the black and white, the facts are very comforting for a lot of people. But I've realized, for at least me and my personality, I feel much more comfortable in the realm of possibility and mystery and intrigue. And I think that's a big motivator for both my sister and I to create this podcast, was to just open our minds up a little bit more about what's out there. And I feel like I'm just taking bits of wisdom from so many different incredible people we've been able to meet, including yourselves. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I would like to say in this point is, I think the basis of our philosophy is that we are not a religion, we're not a nationality, we're not even a gender, we're not even a species. We're all souls.
Wow.
So when I try to see the soul in everything. That's the basic reason we're vegetarian, because we don't want to disturb the lives of other souls. We think every creature has a right to live. And so when you see all other nationalities or ethnicities or religions as not being the body, but as being the life within the body, then you tend to see more equally. And so you don't make distinctions, this religion or that, or this belief or that. You begin to see the life in everything, and then you have respect. And if you have respect for all living beings, then you have a relationship with them. You have care, and you can learn to love, and they can love you. So it develops that way. But it's a vision. It says in the Bhagavad Gita, our scripture, that the sages see all living beings equally. So it's the vision that we aspire to, and not to discriminate one thing against another.
That is so beautiful.
And you're talking about mystery and wonder. You can find mystery and wonder in every living entity. Every living entity. We sat here the other night with the volunteers, and we watched a 90-minute movie about a little octopus. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Yeah.
I think I might have. What's it called?
Some Sweet Octopus or something like that. It's a classic.
Okay.
It's a classic movie. And the guy off the coast of England would do diving, and he got to know this octopus.
Yes, I watched this with my daughters. Yes, I remember this.
This little octopus, maybe 9 inches long. And it just left you wanting to know more about her. It really just touched the surface of her personality. Every the mystery is in every soul, every life. And nobody has the right to see another living being just as a few mouthfuls of flesh. Nobody has a right to cut another wonderful, miraculous, mystical, divine life short just to satisfy, just so that their, taste buds can be stimulated for 30 seconds. When we have so many nonviolent options ahead of us. Yeah, so you don't have to go far to look for mystery, Just look at a bee, look at an ant, look at a butterfly, and every one of them has a multifaceted, deep, sensitive personality.
I love that. I'm vegetarian, so that very much resonates with me. And And that documentary about the octopus is incredible. I'm just going to throw that out there because we watched
I
it
really
earlier
wanna
this year.
see it now.
And I was crying and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so attached to this little octopus that I've never seen before in real life.
Oh,
It is really, really cute though. And I agree. I don't think I can feel the spirit so strongly watching Planet Earth, or we'll often do that on Sundays. My kids and I will sit and watch animal documentaries because it's such a great way to connect with nature, even if you can't leave your house. So
That's
for
one of
sharing
the
that.
reasons we have all the animals here. I mean, we have our own ecology here. But having the animals is part of it. The fish, water provides nutrition and for the plants, the llamas, the cows, they're all part of the environment, which helps us nurture our organic gardens and so on. But with all the tours that we have, the children become so enlivened and get to know the personality of the llamas and the parrots and the peacocks. And then they have a different view. It's not that you go to church for an hour on a Sunday and then do anything else separately, but they see that it's part of life, that everything we do here is 24 hours service to God because it's all God's creatures. And they actually begin to think twice about how they treat the earth or how they treat the animals, just by being in a place where we are living in harmony with nature.
Such a beautiful and devoted life you've created for yourselves, and I shouldn't say for yourselves, but for others. It's really amazing. And I want to come back to a little bit more about some of the other things you believe in addition to vegetarianism, but we also want to know, I heard the last time we were there, I was sitting between two parties and I was listening. I was kind of going in between both conversations and I just sat and listened to both, and I'd chime into one and then the other. And one of the conversations, you were talking to this cute couple, and Caru came up, Vi was talking to them. Caru came up behind them and told them the story of your meeting. And it was so charming. I just was in heaven. I just loved hearing it. And so would you mind sharing that with us? Ashley hasn't heard it. She's excited.
I haven't. I'm excited to hear this. She told me about it and she's like, I'll let them tell you.
Yeah.
It was your story.
Caru, you have to tell it because it was so charming for me, coming from you.
1969, I'm in Singapore in a cafe where Westerners tended to congregate, sitting at a round table, me from America, a guy from Israel, German, Belgium, and there was one vacant seat at the table. It happened to be next to me, and I was situated in such a way I could see the doorway. Lo and behold, the threshold was framed by this gorgeous, gorgeous girl, and as she stood there, she paused and looked around the room for a seat, and reflexively, I just jumped up with panache and pulled out the chair right next to myself. And she sat down and we got to talking. She also wanted to go to Australia, and she had this crazy idea to hitch a ride on a ship. And she knew she'd done her homework, and she knew that there was a club nearby in Singapore that hosted ship's captains. But she didn't want to go alone, and so she asked me to chaperone her. And in those days, they didn't have the security concerns, so we just walked right in, and we met the first person we met. We asked, "Are there any ship's captains going to Australia?" And they said, "Yeah, there's this Norwegian fellow. They're leaving in a couple of days." So we went up and we talked to him, and he agreed right away. He agreed to sign her on as an assistant purser, an unpaid position. I left the next day, and she was to leave 3 or 4 days. And I hadn't even gotten her last name. All I knew was Christine. And I'm on my way to Indonesia, where I was going to spend 5 or 6 weeks in Jakarta and Portuguese Timor and Bali. And the whole time I'm kicking myself, like, what an idiot. You know, you such a nice girl, very talented, beautiful together, and you didn't even get her last name, just in the interest of being cool or something. And I'm thinking, you're a first class idiot. Anyway, I spent all this time in Indonesia, and then I came into Darwin. Now, Darwin, in those days, you didn't stay in Darwin. You just went through Darwin on your way to Cairns or Townsville. So I was just going from the airport to the bus station, and I hear this, "Hello there," and there she
No
was.
way.
She had just gotten there, put 6 weeks on the boat or something. I don't know what it was, but she had just gotten there the day before, and I thought, okay, you were an idiot once, but now's your second chance. Don't be an idiot. And so we've been together now for we got married about a year and a half later. So we've been married for 54 years, and we've been together for 55 years.
Wow.
Congratulations. That is amazing.
You really have had such an adventure on your journey of life. And I've heard a few different stories. I didn't hear the end of that actually before. So that was so fun to hear. Oh, I love it.
From my point of view, I see that it was all Krishna's plan. I took several weeks because of the way the boat was going. And it came to what was some sort of workplace in the middle of the jungle. The system was, it was all men. And when I came in, they said, "You are out of here right now. There's a plane going to Darwin this afternoon, and a little two-seater plane, and you're getting on it." And what they do, the men come up and they work for 3 months or 6 months. And they wanted me out of there that day. So they stuck me on a plane to Darwin, which is the last place I wanted to go to. So there I am, sitting in the cafe, grinding my teeth in fury. And he walks up and I say, "Hello, would you like to hitchhike to Cairns?" So it's 1,000 miles down, 1,000 miles across, and 1,000 miles back up again. So it was all Krishna's plan.
Wow.
So meant to be. So meant to be.
Tell this part of it, but it's really strange. I had no interest really in marriage. I was not a homey person.
Wow.
But when he pulled out the chair in that cafe, it flicked in my mind, this man would make a very nice husband because he was such a gentleman.
Wow, that quickly. Wow.
That's all it took.
Synchronicity, I guess.
But I think it was meant to be that, it was the two of you.
Yeah.
Very serendipitous. That is amazing. Very inspired. So then we also learned that in Australia, Caru had a life-changing encounter where you were introduced to Krishna, and you had come from a Christian background. Could you take us through that transformational journey?
We went to Australia because we'd both been to India, which is the place of yoga, of self-realization, mysticism, and that had been our goal, to go to India. But having arrived there and spent a month or so there, I can't speak for Vi, but I ran out of money, and I needed to go somewhere not too far away to get more money. And Australia was the closest and the most economic place to travel to. So quite cynically, I went to Australia, not expecting any cultural windfalls or experiences, but just very cynically, I'll just earn money, and then once I get a couple $1,000s, then I can go somewhere really interesting, like back to India or Mauritius or somewhere, and then live for a long time on that kitty as well. So I was working on a construction site, and Vi was a waitress. I was being spewed out of the subway downtown George Street in Sydney in Wynyard Station. It was a winter evening, night was falling. It was kind of gray because it was twilight. It was also the financial district, so they're all the men in the gray flannel suits going home and commuting, the gray buildings, the gray skies, and a bit of color caught the corner of my eye, and I turned, and there was an American with an orange robe on and a turban, and passing out the magazine of the Hare Krishna movement called Back to Godhead. I did a double or maybe a triple or quadruple take. I don't know, because that was like, I'm like, am I in India or Australia? This is the last thing I expected to see in Australia, of all places.
Mm.
Yeah. What brought me ultimately was music, philosophy, and food, not necessarily in that order.
Mm.
And they had the feast. You know what the feast is. You've been twice. Every ISKCON temple in the world since the 60s has always had what we call the Sunday Love Feast. They started it in the hippie days, in the summer of love in Haight-Ashbury, but the love, the word is not used in that sense. It's not erotic love; it's divine love, love for God. And so we would go once or twice during the week for the chanting and the lessons, and then we'd always go on Sundays. 6 months went by. We'd earned the money we'd initially intended on earning. We decided we're going to hitchhike to Adelaide, to Western Australia, and then get a boat to Mauritius. And before we left, we quit our jobs and we asked Upendra, can we just spend 10 days in the temple just to experience it? And he said yes. And he also told us, oh, by the way, in case you're not aware of it, when you're living in the temple, you can't smoke or drink. We said, okay.
Oh.
And so we experienced the temple, and then we left, and we got to Adelaide. We got, a couple days out. We were in this mining town. We'd become vegetarian in the meantime. We went into this restaurant for lunch, and this 50-year-old gum-chewing waitress asks us what we wanted, and we said, "Can we get the?" We said, first of all, do you have any vegetarian offerings? Well, that sent her into paroxysms of laughter, and after she picked herself back up the floor, she told us, "No, we don't." And then we said, "Well, can we get the mint jelly and the mashed potatoes without the lamb?" She again told us no. She told us no. So
Oh, come on.
We ordered two plates of mint jelly, mashed potatoes, and lamb. And we were sliding the lamb off onto a third plate. And we just looked at each other. And I think we had the same thought at that time. Let's just go back. Let's just go back,
Wow.
We'd both traveled extensively for years. We'd been to many countries, but it was just superficial, just kind of skimming the surface. Mm-hmm. And here was an opportunity to do the inner journey, to find out who we really were in a spiritual sense. And it was at that time, at that moment, it was very cathartic. We realized this is what we want to do with our life. And I thought that our traveling days are over. We're going to live a monastic life full of study and contemplation and chanting. And so we thought this is really going to be a lifestyle change. Interestingly enough, no sooner we moved in the temple than we took leadership roles. And then we found out that Prabhupada wanted every devotee to go to India at least once every 3 years, but anybody in a leadership role would go once every year. So for the next 10 years, I went to India for at least 4 to 6 weeks every year.
Oh, wow. So you did keep traveling.
And then once I was in charge, I couldn't wait to move us back into the city. We got a storefront in Paddington, which was the trendiest, most happening place in the city. And when we had our Sunday feast, we get like 150 people spilling out on the sidewalk.
Be sure to join us next week to hear the rest of this amazing interview with Vi and Caru. And please hang on till the end of this episode to hear an incredible rap performed and written by Caru himself. We're so grateful you're here. Please follow us on That's Church Podcast on Instagram. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a rate and review, we would be extremely grateful.
Sri Krishna, your pure charisma, your flute playing is so intoxicating, singing your sound down in Vrindavan, pleasing all the devotees and enchanting the hearts of the bhakti yogis. In a trance you dance the divine romance of Rasa Lila with Radharani. In the Bhagavad Gita you teach us bhakti. Your divine pastimes are so sublime, they refresh the heart and fill the mind and give relief just like the monsoon after the lingering heat. You lifted a mountain with your little finger, you're the sweet butter thief nose baby Gopal, the killer of Kamsa, the lover of Radha, your complexions dark blue like the ocean. I offer my devotion with all of my emotion.
Wow.
Hare Krishna.
Wow.
The perfect way to end.
Hare Krishna.
Oh my